Hi, everybody. Welcome to Author Talks, where writers are an open book. My name is Jane VanVooren Rogers, writer-editor, host of the show, and I am so thrilled and honored to be here today with Linda Jo Heffner, author of Tainted Seas, My Sailor Story, which is a memoir about her life experience. Linda Jo, I'm just so glad to have you here today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm very thrilled to be here myself. This is quite an opportunity because inside of my book, Tainted Seas, is a very important message. And I'm hoping that with the publication of Tainted Seas, that the public will understand.
Absolutely. And I'd also just like to say a quick Happy Veterans Day message, since Veterans Day is coming up this week. Just a thank you to all who served and their spouses and families. Linda and I were talking just briefly before we got on today, and Linda was pointing out that a lot of times military spouses are, tend to be overlooked as far as the veteran experience.
Yes, we're pretty much told to take our flags and go home. And really, if my children, when my husband died, were 5, 7, and 9. So they didn't know their father, and they lived a life without their father. As Bud was sick for almost 4 years before he died in 1979. So it's, and it took me that long to write this book, all those years. And I had to write it. Pretty much had to. And so I did. How about that? And it's doing quite well. So I'm pleased with that. So it makes me feel good. Still a little bit of butterflies in my stomach, but then you wouldn't be a writer or an author if you didn't have those butterflies in your stomach.
Absolutely. So let's back up just a little bit and talk about the happy butterflies in your book from the courtship that you share with your husband, Bud. So can you walk us through that a little bit as to what that was like?
The beginning of my book is so hilarious, our courtship. I met Bud at Penn State in 1968. My husband was a NESEP, which is Naval Engineering Special Education Program, which was a very select group. He was 23. And my husband, I love him, he wasn't my husband yet, had decided at 23 years old he would move into the dorm to meet lots of girls. His first weekend there, he laid his pickup line on me. Hi, I'm Bud. I'd like to introduce myself to the most beautiful girl in the dining hall. This was the dining hall at Penn State. And first I was all baffled because he was so handsome. Gosh, so handsome. I didn't think he was talking to me. So finally I realized he was laying a pickup line on me. So I said, "Does that shit work for you?" And then he didn't know what to say. He collected my name and left. And then the grand chase was on. So the beginning is very funny because I did try to avoid Bud. I was a sophomore and he was a freshman. What did I want with a freshman?
And I remember you saying a 23-year-old freshman as well.
Yeah. Well, he was in the Navy 5 years before and had served on 2 ships off the coast of Vietnam, of which he seldom talked about. He did not want to talk about that era. He called me doll and he would say, "Doll, that's over." He says, today's today. I don't want to talk about it. So I don't really know a lot about Bud's service before I met him because he didn't want to talk about it. Most Vietnam vets kept quiet. And it's just recently that they are sharing because our veterans came home from Vietnam, our warriors came home from Vietnam, scorned, rejected. In fact, my husband on our honeymoon chose to wear his uniform to fly on our honeymoon. Mm-hmm. And when we got off the plane, he was accosted by protesters and spit on his uniform. And God bless my husband, he did not say anything. Bud was a man of few words when he got upset. He just kept walking forward and the hippie would back up. And he'd walk forward and the hippie would back up. And I just looked at my husband's fists and clenched, and I knew that if he took this hippie on, he'd kill him because he was that angry. But that wasn't in Bud's nature. So he just kept walking forward, never breaking his path for anyone. And finally, the hippie just turned and ran. And I just exhaled at that point because my husband, my sailor, served off the coast of Vietnam. Did he believe in the Vietnam War? No, but that was his job. He went in voluntarily. He was not drafted. He went in as an enlisted man. Mm-hmm. And when they came out with the NESEP program, he had his application in the next day. Wow. And it was so difficult to get in. They started out accepting only 2,000 nationwide. They finally got it down to 415 nationwide. Then they had I think it was a mandatory 17% cut at the prep school. So he could have gotten cut there. Then they had to apply to a local college, and Bud applied to Penn State and got accepted. And then of the people that were accepted in the program and were enrolled in college, only 50% graduated. When Bud graduated, we sat in a big hall at the Hessel Union building, the hub, amongst hundreds of young men and women, mostly ROTC, and 4 graduates, and Bud was one of them. He was also the youngest NESEP. So it's pretty much a big accomplishment for him, his dream. He finally had his dream. Bud didn't care what he graduated in. He was mandated by the Navy to go into the science and mathematics and the engineering. Mm-hmm. And that was a struggle for him because my husband was a historian, not an engineering type, but he worked his butt off. He wanted to be an officer, and he would do anything to become an officer. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, when it just seemed like our dream was coming true, and he made it, and then he collapsed at work. And that ended Bud's dream for him. That ended our dream. And so there, the beginning, you're going to laugh, and at the end, you're going to cry. And as one of my preview readers said, to read Tainted Seas, one must have a carton of tissues for the sad part, and clean underwear after pissing yourself laughing. Well, that's pretty much describes the book because it's a roller coaster. It really is a roller coaster. When I wrote the funeral, I didn't write the funeral service. I wrote about my children. And my children were hilarious at the funeral. Who wants to hear the mass? I mean, my kids were funny. They were going on, it's funny, but it's not funny. So,
right. Anyway. So what year was it that Bud suddenly collapsed? And
he collapsed at the age of 29, and that would be 1972. No, I'm sorry, 73.
Okay.
No, 2. I'm sorry, because then we flipped a year afterwards. And then he died in 79. So my kids really didn't know him. I was pregnant with Valerie, my youngest, when Bud was diagnosed.
And what was he diagnosed with?
He was diagnosed with a glioblastoma. A glioblastoma is still one of the most deadly brain tumors. And what makes it deadly is the fact that it's like a spider. In fact, my husband called it the spider. And it has all these little tentacles. It has a center mass and all these little tentacles. And unless you kill that last little cell, every little cell, so you're not going to cure it. So Bud did do 9 weeks of radiation unsuccessfully, but it made no sense to me. Bud should not have that. Bud got up in the morning and he ran every day. At lunchtime, he would go and play racquetball. After work, Bud and I and the kids would do long distance biking. He was in top-notch physical shape. And then he gets this strange, very rare cancer. At Bud's age, when he was diagnosed, only 0.5% of people his age had a glioblastoma. 0.5%. That's like a grain of sand in the beach.
Right.
The oddest encounter I had was with a civilian doctor, his neurologist, who said to me, was your husband ever exposed to chemicals? Did he live on a farm? Maybe insecticides or weed killers. And guess what? Was sprayed in Vietnam. Yep. And my husband was there. My husband ate, drank, and slept and lived with water poisoned or tainted with Agent Orange. Now, I don't like to call it Agent Orange because there's like all kinds of flavors of it. There's pink, there's orange, there's white, there's blue. They just kept boxing it back up and sending it back out. And they knew exactly what they were doing. It was used in World War II against Malaysia. It has, they had the test results when they got it. Now, you asked me earlier, am I concerned about repercussions on this? Because, I do expose the government and for what they did, how they poisoned people. I don't think so, because they have already admitted that they have. The chemical companies have admitted. And everything I say in my book is absolutely true. I have the facts, I have the statistics in the last part of the book.
And you went to school for science as well, for college.
I have a Bachelor of Science degree. I have an MS in education, or MA in education, and I have 32 credits towards my doctorate. I just had to write my paper to get my doctorate, and at that time I had teenagers and I was working full time, so they just, you couldn't do it over the internet like your young folks can now. You had to go and sit in the library and write the doctorate thesis, and I've never been sorry. I mean, what I did afterwards, I got Microsoft certification to teach software, and I got Adobe certification to teach their software, and that got me, after I did a full-time job with the public schools, and I went out and taught in a business school, college, and then back to business school, and then I just called it quits. So it's time to retire.
But because of your science background, it sounds like that also gave you the impetus to look at things a bit differently and really to do the research and look at the data and look at all these things, because I can just tell that you have such a deep well of knowledge about all that.
Well, I did my research. In fact, on YouTube, I do have a YouTube presentation that explains the chemical breakdown of the dioxin. I don't like to call it Agent Orange, but that's what most people know it as. It has a breakdown of dioxin. And if you want to watch that, and I tried to stay not too technical on that. And the thing about the dioxin or the Agent Orange was it has a charge on the end of this. This dioxin has a charge on the end. It's called a polar, positive, negative. Well, so does water. So guess what likes each other? Dioxin and water. So water picked up the dioxins and runs it to every cell in a person's body. This is why you're seeing such variations in types of illnesses. People say, well, you have this, you have that, you have this. How come it's all different kinds of illnesses? Because the water went everywhere with this poison. And it just took the spot that was the weakest on that person. Or wore out that spot until they got it. So, and it really, really bothers me. I have so many military friends and veterans friends, and they're dying on me. They're getting sick and they're dying on me. Now, granted, my bud died at 33. I should be angry, and I am angry. But there's not a thing I can do about that. But what I can do is keep our young warriors from getting ill. And we're still doing this kind of situation to our young warriors. We have the burn pits in Afghanistan, where they piled tons of toxic waste, football-sized fields of toxic waste, and they lit them on fire into this big black cloud. Google it, it's awful. And right next to it slept our warriors, our military. And so they're getting sick from that. Camp Lejeune was another example. Knowingly, they knew that the water in Camp Lejeune was poisoned, but it took 8 to 10 years, and those people are still struggling to get their benefits. Miscarriages, deformed babies, sick people, all from the Camp Lejeune poisoning that they did to these people. Now, the VA's gotten a little bit better. They're going a little bit faster, and I think they've gotten a lot of pressure from the public to move these along. But there have been people that the Vietnam War was over in 75, and this is what, 221? It's about time these folks get their benefits.
Oh my God.
Wait till they die to get their benefits. And I did work with women to get their benefits after Bud died, and it was nearly impossible. If it was within a year and I could get good documentations, I could get it, but otherwise, no. It just wasn't going to happen. And so you sign this blank check as a military person, and you sign it with your life. You go there willingly. My husband went there willingly to serve his country. He said, I will lay down my life so that you all can be safe. Not expecting that his enemy would not be the ones carrying the guns, but his own government that sent him there. And that, to me, really is an atrocity. That has to stop. So this widow found that she can write, and I can talk, and I'm not going to be invisible anymore. I'm not going to take my flag home and shut up as expected to. I'm watching. And they do this to one of my veterans, one of my military personnel. I'll write about it. I'll talk about it. Because if we don't open the curtains so that we can see what's going on, there's nothing that's going to stop this from continuing. And now I'm going to get off of my soap opera.
No, you're great. You're great.
I am very,
So
very
proud of you
passionate
for
about
what you're doing, and so inspired by what you're doing.
Thank you.
It's really, it is an area that is not that has often been so hidden and so silenced, and so I think that it's good to be able to start to bring some of that out and tell the truth about what's going on with veterans and their situation.
When I'm traditionally published, and I have a 3-book contract with Dudley Court Press, which is about the best publisher I could have had, and do have. So I'm working on 2 more books. But at the same time, you have to go out and look for another book that's a successful book that you can say, my book's similar to that one.
Right. The whole comparative authors.
We are looking for Vietnam era book written by a wife that was successful. No, there aren't any.
And you're the first.
There's some out there, but they flopped. And I mean, they're really good books. I read them, but this is a lot of work to put out a book. You have to make people know who the family is, that this is being affected. Too many of these women start with, oh, he was a marvelous guy, now he's sick, and it's like, no, you make people either hate your characters or love them. And I guarantee you, and most of my readers have said, that they fall in love with our family. And they should. And then the tragedy, which is true, everything in Tainted Seas is true, becomes more poignant, more effective, tears out your heart, because you know these people now. They're the people next door. And it's really strange because as I'm promoting this book, people are saying, Linda, I have the same story from my father. I have the same story from my uncle, my grandfather, my son. And if people don't, they said, well, and one woman even said, people don't understand how I feel. But what I'm going to do is hand them your book. And then they'll gain an understanding how this teared out their heart. And really, the Vietnam War and subsequent things, that's not over. It's not over. Some of these poor fellows have PTSD so badly at night they can't sleep, they can't hold a job. So what we have to do is do what they did for us. We have to safeguard them. We have to take care of our veterans. They took care of us. Now it's our turn to take care of them. Honor them and make sure that they live. I see too many signs of homeless veterans sitting on the corner, too many alcoholic problems, too many PTSD, too many cancers, too many heart problems, too many high pressure problems, high blood pressure problems. I'm tired of seeing that. I want it to stop. My generation, we can't do anything. We were scorned. We were given a curse. We were given a death sentence. But I sure would like to see it stop for the next generations.
So when Bud collapsed, did you both start to do research at that time?
Oh, there wasn't time. There wasn't time. The ironic thing was we had just moved from Charleston, South Carolina, Naval Base, and you'll find out why. We were essentially forced to move out of Charleston because our lives were threatened. And then we moved to California. We didn't even have the boxes unpacked in our townhome in San Diego when I got the phone call. I didn't even have a car to go to the hospital. I knew no one. So, the guy called and I said, okay, I'll be right there. And I thought, I don't know where the hospital is. I don't have any way to get there. So I went into panic and I did make it. One of the stars in my book is Barbara, and she's another Navy wife. Without her, I wouldn't have made it through. So Barbara was my hero, and I found out she was there, and she came and got me and took me. And it's going to tear your heart out because my husband was so hopeful that radiation would cure him because he lived for the Navy. He lived for the Navy. He loved his family. He was devoted to his family. He was devoted to me. But just as heavily, he was devoted, heart and soul, to the United States Navy. That was his life. And that was going to be stripped away from him. And some of the writing of that was painful to write. But he was quite the guy. I mean, he went from enlisted at age 18 to an officer. And he did, 5 years before he started a NISA program. And then they had to finish at Penn State in less than 4 years. And you could not fail a subject or you went back to sea.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, you could not. If you got ill or needed physical therapy to be able to go back to college, you couldn't take a term off. You went back. And and it was tough. Those engineering courses were tough. Those mathematics courses that were required were tough. And my husband worked his butt off. So he did it. And he almost quit once. And I think it's a very touching chapter. But
So when you were writing this, do you have like a lot of journals from your life to be able to draw from? Because your memoir is definitely written, more like fiction, with scenes and conversations and all of that, and it really pulls you in. So how were you able to create that?
And I have a memory. When something is traumatic in your life, you remember it. I can remember what my husband said, what happened, what occurred in our life, because at the beginning it was the most wonderful time of my life, and at the end it was the most tragic. But then I can't remember why I went in the kitchen for something. But I remember all the details very, very vividly. And I think what happens and why I remember it is people talk about closure. I don't like that word. They said, oh, he's been dead since 1979. It's about time you have closure. You don't shut the door on someone you love, especially if their death doesn't make sense. Somebody did something to Bud to make him get ill. So I went on a quest to find out, and I did find out. On February 2nd, I drove to Tampa.
And was that last year, Linda Jo?
2020.
Okay.
January 1st, Blue Water Navy bill was passed by the National Veterans Advocacy Association, who is endorsing my book now. And on February 2nd, I drove to Tampa for their conference. And it was the National Veterans Advocacy Conference in Tampa, Florida. And they were featuring their new law, Blue Water. So I sat there thinking, this was a waste of time. I should just go home. I've hit all these wild goose chases. Nobody's, I don't want to be there. There weren't that many women there. And if they were there supporting their pretty sickly looking husbands, that were there. So I was there alone. And when I listened to Commander Wells go step by step by step, explaining how my husband was poisoned, the whole place went cold. And then the next speaker was a very powerful Marine, retired Marine, Brian Moyer. Oh, Brian Moyer not only had facts, but he had photographs. Now, all the ships that went to Vietnam had to stop to get supplies and water. And they stopped most of the time in Guam. And I remember my husband saying that his ship did stop in Guam. Brian Moyer had pictures of both reservoirs that supplied water to our ships and to the people that were on base in Guam. And they had sprayed right to the edge. And the one photo that really stuck in my mind, it's raining. Green plants grow in rain. And on the bottom, it looked like a deadly moonscape of dead plants. And at that point, I was in shock, because then all my children, and I won't go into detail of what my kids have, but all the illnesses that my kids have made sense. Because the effects of being poisoned like that are passed down through the family for the next 8 to 10 generations. So I not only have to be concerned for my children, but my grandchildren and their children and the next children and the next children after that. And at that point, I almost wished that if Bud had to die, he would have died of radiation poisoning, and then at least it would be done. But this is not over. This will never be over for my family and many more. I'm just one of many. The only difference is I have a bigger mouth and I wrote a book. So anyway, so that's, pretty much the whole, when I discovered on the weekend after I came home, when I get upset, I just go in my room and hide. And it was Saturday night. I didn't shower. I didn't change my nightgown. I didn't clean up the dishes. I just stayed in my bed thinking. Emotions going through my head like a pinball machine. And I wrote a little piece, for a journal piece to send off about this experience. And I sent it to my editor. She says, your book's coming back, Linda. You have to redo it. And it did. And then the pandemic hit, and guess where I was writing it. So that's how it changed. At first it was called Fading Mirror because my kids were losing the memory of their father. And it was changed to Tainted Seas. And it's going to go up and down and make you laugh and cry. So.
Well, so my question just went out of my head. So did you have any suspicion sort of throughout the decades as you were writing and as you were working, you suspected that?
Oh, yeah. Something was wrong with Bud initially. There's something called epidermal seizures. Epidermal seizures can be mistaken for somebody just staring off blankly. First year of our marriage, I experienced that with Bud. He just would blame it on, I wasn't paying attention, doll, he'd say. And then those gradually got worse and worse and worse. And there was always a reason. And it was so baffling because he would go into one of these and then he'd come out and he'd be totally, in fact, he'd be more energized than he was before. And it was, and Dr. Tilley explained that to me. Your brain, when you have an inflammation, you get bad headaches, all the bad effects, and then the brain moves the function to another part of the brain, so the spider can't get it. Then the spider moves. Spider gets it again, and then the brain moves, and pretty soon you run out of places to move it anymore. So my husband dubbed this cancer the spider. That was his naming. And essentially the spider killed him. So.
That sounds so complex and so, just unthinkable and hard to.
Well, I have a YouTube video explaining glioblastomas out there. I'm a science major, so if you want to take a look at that, I explain on there what a glioblastoma. It was one of the more painful videos I did. I also have some very funny ones now. Tainted Seas, when I started, it was all funny stories. So a lot of my YouTube videos are about funny things that got cut from the book. And, my husband was hilarious, and I have a bit of a sense of humor too. And so we had quite a funny life together. We had fun together. He was the one man in the world that I could just banter and fun with and just be myself. And not too many people have that. And as I look back, I lost my husband very young. He was 33 and I was 30. But I came to realize that some people never have a love like I had with my husband. So in that way, I was very lucky. Would I like to have more? Absolutely. If I could bring it back tomorrow, I'd trade everything I own to bring my bud back. But I can't. It's the way it is. But he's up on a cloud waiting for me, laughing. He said, look what that girl's doing now. I can see what she's doing now. But someday, when it's my time, and I'm not in any hurry, I have a lot of things to do. When it's my time, I'll go up and join Bud on that cloud. He has a seat saved for me. And he requested one thing, that I bring the ice cream, peanut butter swirl. So
it's beautiful. So you had to have a really difficult experience after his passing and with raising 3 children by yourself. I'm sure that had to be.
I had help from my parents and my brother Tom. And my brother Tom was an angel. I don't know how I would have gotten through without my parents, Betty and Charlie Heffner and Tom. And even to this day, my parents have passed, but even to this day, my brother is, he's always there for me and always there for my children if they need him. So he's really special. I mean, the only thing with Tom, I get a kick out of the little girls have Tom wrapped around their finger, my granddaughters. And I said, well, why don't you let them call you Grandpa? He says, I'm not old enough. He's not that much younger than me. He's my younger brother. But he was really special because when Bud was sick, he'd come over and take the kids, take them away, take them wherever. Because I couldn't go out of the house when Bud was sick unless I had someone there. And then after a while, the functions I had to do, I'm not a nurse, but the functions I had to do, you had to be trained to do. And Dr. Tilley, he was a saint. Dr. Tilley had the fast elevator to heaven when he died. And he had his nurse train me how to give morphine shots, how to take care of someone ill, how to lift someone, because my husband was incapacitated, how to do all the needs that you did. So I was a full-time caregiver to my husband for almost 4 years. We had reprieves, which was really wild because all of a sudden you'd feel like, oh, things are going to get better, and it would last a month or two, and then it would just go away again. My husband could be 8 years old mentally, or it could be Bud, regular Bud. And more it became the first thing and less return. And I lived for those returns. People would say, oh, Linda, you're going to get sick if you keep doing this. And I did get sick. I did get mono. But I couldn't, there was always that chance that my bud would come back just for a minute, and I wasn't going to miss that. I wasn't going to be having him at a home away from me. I had 3 kids. First floor, upper floor was the kids' domain. It was a happy zone. Lower part where Bud had all his stuff, it was like a hospital, and it was hell down there. 2 parts of my life, I split them between the 2. I never slept. I went from a size 14 down to a size 8. And I was skin and bones.
Oh my.
During that care time, I couldn't eat.
And you were 6 feet tall, just to give people a bit of an understanding.
So for me, even 12 and 14 for a 6-foot tall woman is slender.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you could see my ribs. I was skin and bones. And then I finally did get sick with mono, and my parents had to take the kids for 2 weeks, so I got my act together. But by that time, my husband, for the only time in his care, was in a nursing home. And the sad part was, I couldn't go to see him. He was 7 miles away, and I couldn't see my bud. So, but anyway, and it was quite ironic because I was so sick that I wasn't allowed to go see Bud when they knew he was going to die. So my husband died, and I wasn't allowed there. So when they talk about people having a separation from their family due to this COVID, I understand the pain. You wanted to be there. And I did lie one time and go in and see Bud when I was sick, and I shouldn't have. But I had to make sure he was okay. But then I got sick so bad. It was like, what can I do? My body just wore out, and I was angry at my body. Couldn't you have held up a little bit longer so I could take care of my husband? But it didn't. So.
Well, and after such a beautiful and passionate courtship, and all of this fun, and you being pulled like magnets together, and here you are with this big, strong, tall, handsome sailor guy.
My gosh, keep my hands off of that man. I always wound up getting pregnant. I mean, I just was always getting pregnant. And and we couldn't keep our hands off each other. It was so passionate. And it was only us. I mean, I knew that my husband was faithful to me, and I was faithful to him. I didn't want anybody else, and neither did Bud. We were a team. We were a team. We were going to build a life together. He was my soulmate, and I was his soulmate. I was his doll. That's what he called me. And he called me doll from day one. And he would never tell me why. And it comes from a Dean Martin song. And maybe sometime you want to listen to it. It's called Hello, Doll. And
I think I saw that video that you did talking about that.
It took me forever to get my husband to tell me why he called me Doll. But that's all. I was Doll. Only time he called me Linda was when he was angry with me, which wasn't very often. Or if he had something very serious to talk about, then he'd talk Linda. But all the time it was Doll. And at first, when I handed him my manuscript, they said, wow, you overdid the doll business. I said, no, that's the way Bud talked. Every sentence he'd say, hey, doll, and then he'd go. In the morning when I got awake, he said, hey, doll, good morning. And at night, hey, doll, he'd say, I love you. And then he wasn't there anymore. So that's my life, and that's my story. And I hope people enjoy reading this, because I think it has to be told. And I think, there'll be some. It
sounds like this has been like a lifelong mission for you.
It's been a quest to do. And at first it was pretty unnatural, because I'm a science, math, computer science person, major. And then I found out I can write, and I'm a pretty good writer. So at least people are telling me that anyway. Right now, Tainted Seas has 32 5-star reviews on Barnes & Noble.
Very nice.
I've been published since November 2nd, and my sales are over 300 books.
Mm.
And during that first month, you buy Tainted Seas, all of my proceeds and a portion of Dudley Court Press's proceeds will be donated to my veterans organization. So if you're planning to buy Tainted Seas, I would urge you to buy it during the month of November, because I want to benefit my veterans. Don't mess with my veterans, because I will be there. I'll watch it. So.
So can you talk with us a little bit about your path to publication with this book? So as you were working on this, and then last year when you attended that presentation and felt like you kind of got the answer that you had been searching for so long, how then did you find, the right place for your book?
Okay, well, I had my editor, who I told you, Terry, she was military, and she sent me to the library to get a book that lists publishers and agents. And for 2.5 months, I send out 5 query letters a day.
Oh, wow.
I have the whole list of them. And there's also a website where they advertise who's accepting. And most of the time, when I got a rejection, and they took time to prepare, because sometimes they wanted chapter 1, chapter in the middle, and the end. Sometimes they wanted the whole book. But most of the rejections just said, I'm not taking anything right now. On average, agents and publishers get 45 copies a day of new books. And sometimes so that's pretty much what I got. And then I was just about ready to self-publish. And my editor, Terry, wouldn't allow it. She says, Linda, we look at some of these famous authors. They were rejected. The author of Harry Potter was destitute. Rejection after rejection after rejection. And, even Stephen King was rejected how many times?
Right.
Some of Dan Brown was rejected quite a few times. So she says, hang in there. So I said, okay, I got 2 more weeks. I'm going to hang in 2 more weeks. So I got up one morning and I did my query letters. I sent it out at 7:30 because I get up really early in the morning. 11:30, Dudley Court Press called me.
Nice.
They said, okay, tell me about it. So I did. And they said, okay, we want to do a Zoom. So their whole staff was there.
Oh, my goodness.
I did that. And by the time I was on close to 2 hours for a Zoom. And at the end of it, I had a 3-book contract for Tainted Seas, my memoir. My second book, On the Other Side of the Gangplank, which is a historical fiction. And for At the Wall, which is another historical fiction. That one's going to be Army. And I have an idea for a 4th book, an espionage book, but I haven't, I have to live that long to do that. And I will. I'm healthy. I'm in good shape. So
with the multiple book deal, were you pitching the ideas for your other books during that time, or were they just sort of offering like,
oh,
hey,
no, I hadn't written. When I talked to Dudley Court Press, I already had 11 chapters of On the Other Side of the Gangplank done, and I had 10 chapters done on the 3rd book.
Wow.
You can't go to a publisher and say, I'm going to be a one-time author. They're not going to invest their money. Dudley Court Press has invested a lot of money in promoting my book. I mean, I just had a giveaway. They have a whole staff. I mean, I have 5 people that are working, and that doesn't include the book designer nor their editor. They have their own editor. They invested a lot of money in me. So a publisher wants to know that you're just not going to be a one-time deal. They want to know that you are going to continue being an author. And just, I can't say it was really on purpose, but just by accident, I had these 2 other books to say, this is what I have. And I think that was one of the things that...
Well, that had to be a huge selling point, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. And I think people, when they write their query letters, You got to get away. Authors, you have to get away from using those soft words. You want to say, I hope, I feel, I want. Publishers don't care about that. What are you going to do for them? What is your book going to do for the publisher? Mm-hmm. So I use strong words, like I promise your publishing company will make a profit on this book. You will have a huge gain because I already have 2,000 plus followers. I already have this advertisement. I already have all the social media covered. And social media is very important. You go to a publisher and nobody knows anything about your book, they're not going to take you. And the ironic thing was, after I had that contract, the next day another publishing company contacted me, another military publishing contractor, and they had three women on there. They wanted a woman, and I was it. But I already had the one. I'm very glad because Dudley Court Press has been phenomenal. I mean, I just have the best team, and I can't say anything bad about them at all. I mean, they're way beyond my contract that they promised, way beyond in their thing. And I think they are looking at this book as being something they want to be successful. And I do too.
Well, sure.
For different reasons, but but they're marvelous. They're really, it's not unusual for me to send an email out on Sunday, day off, and I'll get one back instantly from the owner, Gail Woodward. She's fabulous. And from the gals that are working underneath, they're all women, except for the book designer and the distributors are male. So, but they are really go-getters. And that's what you need. You need a publishing house that wants to promote you. I cannot imagine being self-publishing and published and doing this myself. The other thing, folks, as an author, if you don't believe in yourself, why would anybody else do it? Now, did I have doubts? You bet your boots I had doubts. Was I going to let anybody see that? Nope. I was going to not let anyone see me sweat. You have to present yourself confidently. Because if you don't have confidence that that book that you wrote is worthwhile, why should anybody else? Why should they care? And you have to be strong. You don't say, I hope you like. No. You will like. You will enjoy. I promise you will enjoy. Everyone has enjoyed. And beta readers are very important. If people would like to contact me on my webpage at lindajoheffner.com, there's a contact page. I have a form for my beta readers to fill out, which gives the instructions and has like 15 questions I want my beta readers to answer. Beta readers don't know you. They read your book before it's published. Mine read it even before I had a publisher. And it's their job to give their reactions, find little errors, like you go to the movie and maybe Tom Hanks' tie is red and the next time it's blue. Find those little inconsistencies and just give an overall view. And some of my beta readers were quite funny.
When would you say is the right time to engage beta readers in the process?
When your manuscript is done.
Okay.
And it's about, I would say 95% cleaned up. Now, there's a great program called Grammarly, which is a writer's dream. If you're going to write a book, you buy Grammarly Pro. You can't do it without it. It's marvelous. It is not only going to pick up the most insignificant thing, it's going to teach you. It's a learning tool, too. Pretty soon, I started out with a 70% when I started writing and using Grammarly. I rarely get under a 98% or 98%. And then you run it through Grammarly. And so there are all kinds of tricks and trades. The other thing you want to do as a writer is listen to your book. In Microsoft Word, If you go under review and then slide to the left, it says read aloud. Now, if you're reading, you have to concentrate on your words. If someone reads it to you, you can listen to the flow. What does it sound like to the reader? Does it transition well here? Did I forget a question mark? Because the voice will go up. How are you? And if the voice doesn't go up, you missed the question mark.
Mm.
Grammarly's not going to catch that. So you listen, and you listen to your transition. The other thing is foreshadowing, and I probably have gotten too good at that because it's ruined my movie going and my reading because I know the ending of the book. There's a few authors that can still fool me, but pretty much, yeah. But foreshadowing is very, very important. You have to foreshadow something at least 3 times. It can be a sentence, it can be 4 words, but it has to be put in. You can't all of a sudden say, Fred was appalled at that happening. Well, somewhere he has to have a reason why he's appalled. And that has to be foreshadowed through his past life. The other segment where I had a weakness in is called introspection. And this was very difficult, especially in the sad part. It was easy in the first part. I love this guy. But at the end, I had to say how I felt. And introspection takes you inside the character's mind. What are they thinking? What are they feeling? And this is really important. Your reader wants to know that. And most memoirs are written in past tense, because the things happen in the past, and they are narrated by the writer, the author. So, for example, if you say, you don't have to say, I felt the breeze. You just say the breeze, blew across the meadow. It's your book. You have whatever. And I do have a whole outline. And if you all would like to contact me, I have a writing process. Being a science major,
That's what I was going to ask. I was going to say, given, it's interesting to me how you picked up all of these tips about foreshadowing and about structure and all these things. It's
I'm
really
a science major. I research things, but I have a process. Now, a lot of people, if they're very artsy, and I do paint and everything. I'm an artist too, but science major, my writing started out looking like a skeleton. And then you go back and you do it, and then you have to vary sentences. And the other thing is varying sentence length. If you don't vary your sentences, and they're all the same, subject, verb, subject, verb, subject, verb, subject, verb, that's where your reader's going to be going to sleep. So I make a concerted effort to go back, vary my sentence structure, vary my sentence length. A very good book to read about that is Stephen King's On Writing.
Yes.
I read that and I thought that was fabulous. In fact, I got the audiobook. And whenever I was feeling a little shaky, I'd sit and listen to Stephen talk. Stephen King lives fairly close to me, in Florida, one of his homes. And you would never know Stephen King. I've seen him, and you would never know it's him. He doesn't want to be noticed. He wants to be invisible. So people kind of know him and leave him alone.
Yeah.
But his writing is fabulous. Some of it's a little shocking for me, but there's some I really, really love. Stephen King works I really love, especially after Cujo was over. That one I didn't care for, but after that, he weaves the story so beautifully, his vocabulary, and I guess Stephen King just has his characters and then just runs with them. He himself sometimes says he doesn't know where the story is going to go. He just lets it go and flow. So that's another way you can approach things, and that's kind of what I did with my historical fictions. I wrote the beginning, I wrote the end, and then you fill in the middle. The ending can change. I mean, all of this can change. The other thing, now, the memoir, I didn't have to do that because I know all the people in there, but on the other side of the gangplank, I have 5 women who didn't know each other. They see their husbands off on the ship to go to Vietnam to fight. They don't know each other. So I had to develop their personalities. I actually went out on the internet, picked up a picture of what I thought my character looked like. Melissa's a tall blonde. Ginny's a sexy brunette with big boobs. Gloria's a young little redhead. Me as an Asian woman from Vietnam. And then I wrote their profiles, their backstories, and I have a file for all of them. And the cutest one on the other side of the gangplank is Melissa's son, Bobby. Bobby has his own profile. Bobby is 7. Bobby has an imaginary machine gun. And he's going to protect his mother from those hippies. And he'll get it out and go, yeah, that's difficult writing because I had to write within the realm of a 7-year-old, his vocabulary. And my vocabulary is very strong. So I had to really think of rudimentary words. Like, see you later, alligator. It's Bobby's favorite. You know, he had imaginary parachutes. He carries his Boy Scout compass. He lives in his costume from Halloween. He imagines that he could save his mom if his mom would buy him spinach. And then he starts singing Popeye the Sailor Man. He was one of my, and there's another character that I love. It's, and we did have this man. His name is Sergeant Matthews. He's an old guy, he's 93. And the girls save him from his impoverishment. First he saves them, and then they meet him, and then they help him out. And this last chapter I wrote is 93-year-old Sergeant Matthews, retired, 6'4", all of them, has a date with a 63-year-old woman, and they are going to the Nutcracker. They can imagine a Marine going to the Nutcracker and all his worries about it. So anyway, but I'm having fun with these. The first one was very painful. Although I did write a chapter in on the wall. I interviewed wives, and I wrote a rape scene. I wrote a couple of rape scenes. There's a rape scene and on the other side of the gangplank too, which was real. It did happen to one of my women friends, but the one on the wall, at the wall, excuse me, that really happened to one of the Army wives. And this woman wanted me to have people know it was her. I said, well, I can't put your name in the book. I said, but I will. One of the things this guy did was pick up the cat and throw it across the room. I said, I will give the correct name for your cat. So I wrote that scene, came out of my bedroom trembling. It was so real. And then I put it away for a while. And then went back to it, but I hit it. I think I really hit it. So, if you're a writer, and there's sex scenes in all these books, if you're a writer and you don't become physically aroused by a sex scene, you didn't hit it. Now you don't get graphic. Don't want to get graphic, but you want the reader to understand what's going on. And probably the most beautiful love scene I wrote in Tainted Seas is in the chapter called The Conductor's Candy Bar, where the bed got broken. And what I did was I put on Beethoven's Piano Concerto. If you listen to that, it starts off really slow, and then it speeds up, and then it goes down, and then it goes up, and it goes down. And all of a sudden it ends with 3 notes, climax. Yeah. And I left that feeling really good about this because it's not a long part, but it's, and it's very whatever. So, you have to feel it. If you don't feel, if you as an author don't feel your character's happiness or pain, you haven't hit it. You want to show them, not tell them. You can't say, oh, Maria was so happy. You got to show them why she's happy. And one of the most effective things is to do that in dialogue. I would recommend to all authors that they sit down and listen to and watch Knives Out.
Oh, I love that movie.
Yes.
Seen
Now,
it numerous times.
that whole movie is all dialogue. It's all told by dialogue. And, they say something as they, in the book it says as they, or while they, since they, so you move it along. And my girls will do the mahjong in conversation while they're discussing what's going on. And it moves along. So you want to be careful. Don't put all your descriptions in one, all your flow in one. Spread it out in dialogue. Dialogue is very positive in there. It makes the reader feel like these are real characters. These are, and in Tainted Seas they are, and they loosely are in the next book. But you want them to feel, and you want the flow to be distributed, the descriptions to be distributed. You can say, this traffic really sucks, I said as I drove down and people were weaving in and out. So, and then the next sentence you go on with the other character. Now, be very aware of the word said. Go to the internet, authors, and download a copy of alternative words to said. You say, oh, this is wonderful, she said. This is so wonderful, she sang out. This is so wonderful, she chirped. Get those words in there. Get rid of the ly words. Mm-hmm. I very happily went to this. I exploded. Mm-hmm. It's like that, exploding with laughter. And to be surprised, most words can be turned into replacements for said. Apologize. I'm very sorry, Margaret. He apologizes. Mm. So you can get rid of that said. Said turns people off. And if you have two people in conversation, let's suppose it was just you and I, after we establish what they are, they can just have a conversation and you don't have to identify them anymore. You can get rid of the said part, unless you want to move the story forward. Mm. Usually what I do is I do that until I'm ready to leave my characters and then put in what they're doing as she went out the door, you could say, which ends the conversation.
It sounds like you've really studied writing and or movies a lot. Would you say that you've studied movies more than books?
Oh, no, the writing.
For both? Writing.
Yeah, writing. I'm an avid reader. Right now, with all this writing I'm doing, my eyes, I'm 72 years old. My eyes get tired. I guess anybody's eyes would get tired. I used to start at 4:30 and I quit at noon. But I still love books. So from your library, folks, with a program called Libby, Libby, you can order books and audiobooks right in the comfort of your own home. And I have gotten hooked on audiobooks. I mean, I read Harry Potter, all of them. And I love the audiobooks that go with them. I mean, I read a lot of lists. I remember in high school reading Pride and Prejudice. I listened to it. And I just, at that time in high school, it was like, I have to read this, geez. But going through now from this different perspective, amazing what that author's vocabulary was. And she was working at a time when she didn't even go to formal school. I mean, she was taught by her mom to read and write. And her grasp of the vocabulary is phenomenal. Now, granted, it's very Victorian with some of the things they get upset about. It's that's on the order of Downton Abbey. But can you imagine writing in pen your book and then handing it to someone and trusting that they are going to keep it? And then, doing changes and modifications and having to rewrite that page. Meanwhile, being a woman where it was not accepted. I mean, she went there and we don't want women. You should be home baking and cleaning. What's this crap? Making babies. Mm-hmm. So now there's a lot of points that I learned In fact, there's a couple, I belong to a couple of writers groups. One has authors that are probably further along than I am, and the other one has writers who pretty much are in the beginning. And if you're going to be a writer, join a writers group. And what that'll do, and what we're doing in our writers group now is writing short pieces. We have a topic, which is very broad, and then a practice. Like, for example, one time we said my bucket list, and then the goal was to include dialogue. And then you work on that. And again, there's some things people should know called the circle rule. You can't, have you ever read a book and all of a sudden you think, well, where's the ending? They got to 360 pages and they quit on me. Something has to bring your reader back so that they know this is the end. Because I've had that already. I'm looking, well, where's the rest of it? You have to, the circle rule works. I mean, you can take people out on a triangle, but you always have to bring them back in again, into that circle, so they know, they feel this is the ending, and they know. Now, my book doesn't start with the end, it starts the beginning. So I think I'll let you read it to find out why.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and when you talk about the importance of building social media interaction, and that you've done so much of that, sort of how did you begin that, and what suggestions do you have for other authors as far as that goes?
Well, I made one mistake. In order to get people to join my Facebook page for my book, I set it up wrong, and they had to go through my personal page to get over there. That was wrong. I should have had it set up to go right to my books page. Every post that I put out there, I tag with my book's name and my book's website. Now, so many people, when they're promoting their book, they do this. And that's it. Now, you have to decide on a theme. You have to give your followers something. So I essentially wrote what I call my theme. My Facebook books page is, and this is the theme, to honor our military, past and present. So I will do post after post after post about the news, about the history, about funny things. And one of my favorite cartoonists is Jeff Bacon with the Broadside. He does military cartoons. So I'll throw one of those in. And then maybe every fifth post, I'll put in something about Tainted Seas. And, you want to be the name and the face. Right now, give me 5 books that Stephen King wrote. Go ahead. Can you? Off the top of your head.
The Stand, Cujo, Carrie, It. Let's see. The Stand, Cujo, Carrie.
It's difficult, isn't it?
And what's it called? Needful Things.
When you are promoting, you are promoting your face and your name. Your face has to be out there. Talk to your people. Go live. Go on videos. A lot of my videos are stories that were cut from Tainted Seas, funny ones, and they're hilarious. Some of them are serious, but you have to be a name and a face. I'm also interviewing veterans, and some serious talks with veterans, some happy talks with veterans. You have to mix it up. I love military.com for the latest, what's happening in the military, and I love history.com. Because those are reliable sources, and you have to make sure that you pick a reliable source when you do that. And like the other day was Sandwich Day. That was listed in history.com. And there's a military connection to that. So, you watch it. And the other thing that was successful is I do a lot of humor. And one of them is Seaman Smith's Blonde Wife. and she gets into all kinds of mischief. It's just fictional things that you make up, and then you put a graphic on there, that makes it funny or a gift. And people share that stuff. They love it. They want to know what's happening to Seaman Smith. I mean, she took parachute lessons, and she takes this and that, and she gets a job here and there, whatever. So she's really a character. And the other thing I've done is I call it life as a Navy wife, and then I pick a funny picture of what would happen after your husband is deployed. And I don't explain it. I just say life as a Navy wife, the washing machine. And then you have a picture of the washing machine exploding because it always did. And then there's another one where I have two little boys that are trying to reach the cookies. Life as a Navy wife, the team. And it's really funny because I've had those shared. My best one was 467 times. And it's still being shared. I haven't counted for a while. And the thing is, folks, you as an author cannot go into some of these private groups and promote your book, but these other people can. So they're picking up and sharing some of these into groups that have 5, 10, 15,000 members. And they're allowed to, because there is no reference to my book, but there is that website and there is the name of my book. I mean, I'd be very, very careful. Read the rules of where you're posting, because you can get thrown out. I mean, even if you have like the memoir page, there's only one day that you're allowed to post something about your own book. Mm-hmm. So, you have to be careful because people are protecting. And my Facebook page for my book, there's no politics, not allowed. A minimal amount of religion, because I started having one veteran who was posting his whole Sunday church service. So,
no.
But, I have contributors, people that send their stuff in, and I just did one. I do serious stuff too, and I get reactions, and I wonder sometimes if some of my veterans, if they're going to be upset by the experience because their fellowship mates, died. So perhaps my book isn't for them, or they should wait till they're ready, or maybe it's therapeutic. I know Tainted Seas was therapeutic for me. I cried a lot while I wrote it. I laughed a lot while I wrote it. It tore my heart out in places, and it made my heart sparkle in other places. So, it is. And the way I handled that, if I wrote something sad at night, I'd have nightmares. First thing in the morning, I tackled that difficult, sad, painful, horrific memory chapter. And then I wrote a happy chapter. I alternated. And then I quit at noon. I always quit at noon. Set yourself a time limit, and you keep it. Now, there's times you can't. You might have a doctor's appointment or whatever. But, that's your time. Pick a quiet place where you can sit up. Be careful of social media. It's so easy to get drawn into the internet and do that big word called procrastinate. I have a sign in the one room that says 10 reasons why I procrastinate. Then underneath it is the number 1 and nothing else. It reminds me, stay focused, because meanwhile, while I'm doing all this promoting, I have a deadline on book 2. This is the other thing, folks. When you're writing, think of the time that you found an author you really liked. What is the first thing you do? I want to read another book by that author. Well, you better have another one out there for them, because they'll forget about you. Remember, this is a competition. And I didn't believe what a big competition publishing is amongst the books. It's really cutthroat. Now, I want to warn you guys, there are scams out there. And do not get involved with the hybrid publisher. Somebody says you have to give me money and I'll publish you. run like the wind. Run as fast as you can. Somebody comes up to you and says, I will do all your publicity. I'll have you everywhere. Give me $500. Run. All of these things, if you do enough research, you can do yourself. You don't have to pay somebody. And again, if you believe in your writing, and if you don't, you better work on it. If you believe in your writing, there is going to be a traditional publisher that wants you. I have nothing against self-publishing. I was going to go that route myself, but this world's different between self-publishing and traditional publishing. Having a publisher behind your book makes all the difference in the world. It cuts down the amount of work you have to do and make sure that you actually have a viable contract. I hired a lawyer who did only book contracts to read mine from Dudley Court Press. When I got his approval, I signed it. And you know what? I didn't know Dudley Court Press. And I was scared. I don't know. I could sign for 3 books and make nothing on them. Now, I don't care in the first one if I make money, but I want, you have costs. The next ones I wouldn't mind making some money on. I'm not wealthy, but, you put all the time in, you should get it. But Dudley Court Press came through way, way, way beyond my contract. I cannot believe how wonderful they have been. So check out who you're signing with and get a lawyer to read your contract. He is worth every penny you pay him. And again, never pay somebody out front to do any kind of services related to your book. Now, if you pay a designer for the book cover, okay, look at what he did in design. Make that conditional, that he will give you 3 covers. Now, he can put something on there to protect himself, but you have the option to say, I'm sorry, I don't like any one of them. And sure, he should get paid for part of his time, but not all of his time. Now, this cover that you have up there now was designed by a young man from Dudley Court Press, Sam. And I think he did a spectacular job, don't you think?
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful cover.
And you might want to also go out to LindaJoHeffner.com, to Tainted Seas website. That website was designed by our son, Christopher Hampel, who after 4 years of Syracuse education, opened his own business. And he has quite a successful business, and I think he's a wonderful graphic designer. And I mention him, but I don't think he's going to take you on, because he's got mostly industrial and web design. He says, Mom, I like web design. They don't pay me. I just take their website down. So, but he's really good. And you get into the website that he designed, and it's going to expand. And the ocean actually comes forward on it. It's really a cool website, and that's at LindaJoHeffner.com. And my email, you can contact me through the contact page on the website, or you can use Linda Jo at LindaJoHeffner.com. And that email has been reserved. That's a webmail only for people related to my book. I don't give that out to friends or relatives. They have another one that's private. But that fills up. I mean, that's filling up all the time. They want to know what happened to Kathy. Why don't you call Sam? He might be single, Linda. Look at the opportunity. I have neighbors that will accost me on the street and say, Linda, did you call Sam yet? Did you check out Sam? Did you Google him? And, they're trying to match me up. So, I don't know.
Would you say that for most authors, do you believe that they should try their best to secure a traditional publisher versus self-publishing, even though, again, you may potentially, make more,
No, you won't.
You won't, because of all the effort that you need to put in.
Because you're going to pay for the book design, you're going to pay for editing, you're going to pay for this, that, everything that the publisher does for you, you're going to pay for it. So all of that's going to be deducted. Now, it may sound good. I'm self-published. I get all the profits. But then you got to design your book. Then you have to pay for marketing. You have to pay for this. You have to pay for that. You have to pay for, and no, give it to a publisher. Give it to a publisher. They open doors. I had no idea that on Goodreads you could do a giveaway. I had 1,147 people enter to win this contest to win free book. 4 of them they were giving away.
Wow.
That pushed up my want to read, they have the must read or whatever they call it, to 441 people who have marked it as to read. Publishers know how to open doors for you. They took an excerpt, without me knowing it, they took an excerpt of Tainted Seas and entered it into the Benjamin Franklin National Writing Contest. Now, you don't get in there, you have to be accepted. All of a sudden she writes to me, she says, "You've been accepted into the," I'm like, holy cow. Yeah. Oh, I think I use a little stronger words, but they know how to open doors. They have the connections. They know, they are counting on you to make the money, but at the same time, they have to believe in you. It can't be all money for them, and it is not all money for Dudley Court Press. They believe in Tainted Seas. They believe in me. So, I wasn't an author before. Now, I need you guys to do something for me. Right now, Tainted Seas is not on the shelves in Barnes & Noble. Nope. And this happened by accident. My friend who lives up in Allentown, my hometown, friends since forever, she takes her copy of Tainted Seas in the Barnes & Noble. She says, "I want 5 of these for my relatives right now. Can you get them off the shelf?" "Oh, we don't have that, ma'am. You can order it from the internet." She says, "Why don't you have it on?" And she's not faking this. She's doing it sincerely. Right. So this lady says, "Well, really? Do you think there'll be a demand?" My friend says, "Yeah, she's from this hometown. Everybody will be in here looking to buy a book." And the lady says, "Well, would you like to buy your 5? "Why should I? Amazon will send it to me for free and I don't have to carry it." And she did. She went home and bought 5 books. But you can actually get your book into the bookstore, Barnes & Noble, which is very select, by getting a bunch of people to go there and essentially ambush the manager. "Where is it? I want it. I got to have it." Is that deceptive? No, these people were going to buy it anyway. So you have to fight it. You think about it. Barnes & Noble only has so much shelf space. Why would they put me on there as a first-time author when they can have King, they can have Nichols, they can have Brown, they can have all those established authors? That space is for them. So you kind of have to force yourself into the bookstore. So we are staging, and maybe you'd like to help me, a campaign. If you bought my book, walk into Barnes & Noble and ask for copies. I won't forget. And this is a perfect gift for any veteran, both for Veterans Day and for Christmas. And the timing was that it was supposed to be Memorial Day, but it takes time to publish a book. So I want to be in Barnes & Noble by Memorial Day, and I want to do a book signing in Barnes & Noble by Memorial Day. And those are pretty lofty goals, but you don't stop me. When I make up my mind, I do it. So.
Well, and I'm sure that there are also, many wives and widows and people too who are going to be really interested in your book and also reading your book for therapy and understanding.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I don't know. Did you know that sailors were poisoned by Agent Orange? Before you met me, did you know that?
I think I knew it at one time, or I heard that with regard to Vietnam and things like that, but it's not something that I've studied deeply.
No,
And
not
so
to the number or extent, and I bet many of your listeners now really were not aware. And we did think we were going to be, I never thought Bud would be sick. He was on a ship. Where could be a safer place? He's not on the ground with that stuff falling on his face. He was on a ship. My husband was safe. And we were sold that lie that our husbands are safe. It was a lie. And we bought it. And I don't say that the people that told me that didn't believe it either. I mean, they bought it too. And the sad part was, after Bud got sick, he was like an old newspaper and tossed in the garbage. And that's what's happening to our veterans. They can't function to serve, so we just toss them away and we'll throw another person in and violate them. And that can't happen. So, not it. And you'll read some of the ways my poor husband was forgotten. So.
Do you have other suggestions for how, just as everyday people, that we can reach out to veterans to help them?
I think what you want to do, and especially with the Vietnam veterans, I think you need to, if you're my age especially, apologize for the fact that they weren't welcomed home. I think when you get a notice, like, right now you'll see notices on my Facebook about bills that are going to support veterans' bills. If our veterans can't eat and they can't pay their rent, everything else, it's important, everything else, but that's a fundamental. Mm-hmm. Write to your senators, write to your congressmen and say, I support this. National Veterans Advocacy Association is putting this bill. I want you to vote for it. And I've already gone to DC and lobbied with the Gold Star wives. And we got a bill passed. And I'd like to say somebody was really interested, but they tacked it on a bill that they knew the next day nobody would read, and it went through. So it was a big savings for a lot of wives, widows. And I did work on it. I did work with that. I was busy with my kids, so I would say most of my work started after my kids were grown. As my kids were growing, I was working all day. I had 3 kids, and I went to college at night with GI Bill for my master's degree. So I don't know. I didn't have time to do that. But when Bud died, I really wanted to know why. And I'll tell you what, I had a pang of guilt that I had benefits. And these women, widows, didn't. Now, I got my benefits because when Bud got sick, he was active duty. There was no doubt that what he had was service connected. He got 100%. And I would feel guilty that this woman didn't. I even went to a funeral for a woman that I tried to, for her husband's funeral, that I tried to get her benefits. I drove from Pennsylvania to New York to be there to support her. She says, nobody understands me. Nobody realizes. Nobody's going to help me. And I felt so bad because I couldn't help her. I had one woman I filled out with her, and I know how to do this, fill out the forms. And there's something called a nexus letter. Nexus letter is usually from a civilian doctor. And what it says is condition that the veteran has, and then explains why it's related to Agent Orange, asbestos poisoning, whatever that person was exposed to. Mm-hmm. This woman had been on the list for 2.5 years to be reviewed to get her benefits. We had a perfect packet to go to that. She went to her hearing after 2.5 years, and her claim was denied. You know why? The Nexus letter was signed by a doctor in blue ink instead of black ink. All legal papers must be signed in black ink. Now, we got another letter, and we got it signed in black ink, but now she's at the end of the list again, or she was at the end of the list. I think she died before she got it, so
Oh, goodness. And those meaningless bureaucracy kind of things.
Delay, deny, and wait till they die. But like I said, they are getting better. And I thank the VA. And I have mixed feelings about the VA. When Bud was sick, I got wonderful equipment. There were some problems. I had to pay the bill and then they'd reimburse me, which I didn't have that money half the time. I had payment plans, I had delayed payments, I had scheduled payments, I had payments on the payment plans. And then they would pay, then I'd pay it off. Then, oh God, so they were good to me as far as equipment and supplies. There's some places they were lacking too. And the Navy, I could not get honor guards for Bud's funeral from the Navy. At the time, they wouldn't do that they only did that for veterans who died in Vietnam. So I couldn't get honor guards, Navy honor guards at my husband's funeral. And I wasn't the only one. Friends of ours, her husband was wounded in Vietnam, flown to Germany. He died in Germany. My husband cannot be on the wall because he didn't die in Vietnam. My husband was killed in Vietnam, only sent home to die later. But he can't be on the wall. And I appreciate all the people that are on the Agent Orange wall that they just created. But it's a little too late. And it's a little too little for all the guys and gals. And I'm from the 60s, so I mostly say guys. In my generation, the women served as nurses or they were in the Red Cross. You didn't have very many active duty fighters at that time. So I often say men, but now we have both. Thank goodness. The glass ceiling is starting to be broken. So it's a tough thing to do. So writers, I think the first thing you want to do is say, I'm going to write. Period. You're right. Don't worry about if it's bad or it's good. Just sit down and write. And then clean it up. Then approve it. And go back and do it again. Then go back and do it again. And pretty soon you'll know your whole manuscript by memory. And then go through and look for words you can change. This is a really cool thing on Word. You highlight a word, you go down, and it'll give you synonyms. I look beautiful, or Margaret looked beautiful, you could say. Margaret looked elegant. Margaret looked exquisite. Margaret looked dignified in her. And you have to tell her why. You don't just put it out there. Okay, you have to always tell why. Always show, not tell. So.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all of the great tips on writing and publishing. Thank you for sharing, your story. Thank you for all that you're doing too, as far as, sharing your truth, sharing your story, sharing the truth that so many other people have experienced, and, all of your support of veterans and all that you're doing. I think that it's wonderful. It's brave. It's inspiring.
Oh, thank you. And I thank you for inviting me. It's been an interesting interview and you handled it very well. And again, my website is lindajoheffner.com. lindajoheffner.com, just the way you say my name. And I hope that you purchase, especially in November, Tainted Seas. I have people that are reading it now and say they can't put it down, so I hope you enjoy it. And I thank you for having me, and I wish you a lot of success in your interviewing. You're a very cool lady. So.
Oh, thank you. You are a very cool lady, and it's an honor to meet you and talk with you. And I'm sure we could talk for days.
Oh, we could, yes, and we will. We will. I think we'll be fast friends outside of this interview.
Absolutely.
So good luck to you, young lady, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Linda Jo. And go get Tainted Seas. We've been sharing this on YouTube. The link for bookshop.org shows up. It helps support authors. It helps support Author Talks, which is this show. It also helps to support local bookstores. And also, as Linda requested, please go request it at Barnes & Noble, request it at your libraries. Those are good things that you can do to help support authors. So again, thank you so much. And thanks everybody for watching. And go thank a veteran and thank them for their service and their sacrifice, and thank their families as well. So thanks everybody.
We'll talk again. Thank you.
Sounds great.
Okay, bye.